Hello viewers! Today you'll see me brewing red yeast rice wine, Matsu Islands style. This brew was inspired by a video shot in the Matsu Islands on the Chow Cook channel. And that's Brother Zhao, you'll see right here. He's the host of this video, and I learned some interesting things from this demonstration. So please watch my previous video for the background information on the original video. There are some specific things I learned from that video. I learned that the best quality red yeast rice can be easily crushed between your fingers. And I learned to soak the red yeast rice overnight before you brew. Also, it's important to allow the brew to ventilate well at the start of fermentation, and then to close the lid almost completely. So start it off just covered with a cloth, and then later on put the lid on and close it almost completely. And the fermentation time is 60 days. So that's a long time to ferment. After that, of course, it can be aged, but the fermentation time is 60 days. So for me, that's a longer time than normal. So this will be interesting. If you like this video, please click that like button and subscribe. Click the bell to be notified when I publish a new video on the subject of rustic Asian rice wine every week. And please share this video wherever it is appropriate. So this is red yeast rice here. Let's do it. Let's make some wine. So red yeast rice is available in many Chinese supermarkets. I've seen it in pretty much every large Chinese supermarket and many smaller ones. Always read the Chinese label,紅麹米, and ignore the English label, which is inaccurate. This just says red rice. That is missing an important word. This is red yeast rice. I'm going to use 150 grams of red yeast rice. That's 50% more than necessary. I'm doing that because this package is not fresh. I have a lot of it, so I'm using a bit extra for this brew. And can I crush it easily between my fingers? Yes, I can, and it turns into powder, so that's a good sign. I add 1 liter of water. And I soak it overnight. That's a step I did not do before. I also have to prepare the sweet rice. I'm taking 1 kilogram of sweet rice. Gently wash and drain that repeatedly. So the Matsu Islands are pretty interesting. They're islands. They're very close to Fuzhou, just off the coast of mainland China, but they're part of Taiwan. So the sweet rice is washed, and we will soak this overnight as well. It's the next morning. I'm calling this day 0. And I'm draining the sweet rice. Rinse it off. And then let it drain for 30 minutes. And prepare the steamer with a damp cloth. And add the rice to the top. So there's water in the lower section of the steamer, of course. And wait until you see steam before starting the timer. And steam it for 40 minutes. Okay, then open it up carefully. Of course, it's hot. Steam is escaping. And I'm going to spread this out to cool off. It should cool to 30 degrees Celsius or just below. So when sweet rice is properly steamed, it becomes translucent. It's not mushy, it's firm, but it does not have a hard center. So it needs to be cooked all the way through, but not mushy. So take a close look, and I'm going to take 1 grain of rice as a sample and verify that that grain of rice is evenly cooked. If it was under steamed, there'd be a hard bit in the center that was a solid white color. And you can also check the texture by tasting. I'm going to use some white wine yeast. This is not part of the original recipe, but for my purposes, it makes things consistent, so I don't have to worry about the fermentation. So I'm using 100 milliliters of warm water and half a teaspoon of white wine yeast. Now, remember the red yeast rice that we soaked overnight? That is still here. I don't drain that. I keep all that water. That was 1 liter of water plus the red yeast rice. I add this cooled steamed rice and also add the yeast. And I'm going to mix that by hand. That's the best way to make sure every grain of rice is separated and covered with, and the red yeast rice is evenly distributed and the yeast mixture is evenly distributed. So get that mixed up, wipe off the jar. That looks good. Instead of using a lid, I'm going to use this nylon filter bag to cover 2 layers to cover the jar. This allows the brew to breathe because it's consuming oxygen and producing carbon dioxide. And keep it out of sunlight around 18 degrees Celsius on the Matsu Islands during the Xiaoshui solar term, which is when that video is from, around 15 degrees Celsius. So I think this is around the right temperature. This should work. Now the next day, I'm going to take off the cover and okay, not too much is happening so far. Still pretty solid. I'm going to stir it once a day for the first 3 days. And I'm going to leave a well in the center that allows the air to get into the lower parts. And tie up the cover again. And then the next day, day 2, take a look. Okay, some liquid is collecting in the bottom. And now I hear little bubbles. Okay, so it's fermenting. Need to stir it again. I leave a well in the middle like before. And day 3, okay, lots of liquid, especially near the bottom, and bubbles. So this is working well, and it filled in the well by itself. Listen to that again. Okay, more activity, and stir it again. It's much softer now. So now it's time for the lid. So it's not going to be completely closed. It's going to be a little bit open. And I'm not going to be stirring it anymore. So from now on, it's pretty hands-off. But I am going to be watching it closely. So I'm only taking it out of the cabinet to photograph it and so you can see the progression of the fermentation. So most of the time, it's in the dark cabinet. And now day 6, you can see it's soft on the bottom. It's very liquid. It's a little more solid on the top. So we'll just keep on watching this day by day. And of course, the plan is to ferment it for 2 months. So plenty of liquid and bubbles. It is fermenting, but I'm just leaving the lid on. I'm not stirring it with a spoon anymore. I'm just shaking it so you can see the texture. So it's getting softer and softer and looser as time goes on, and it's still producing bubbles. So during the process here is that the red yeast rice contains enzymes that convert the starch in the rice into sugar, and then the yeast that I added, the wine yeast, that yeast can convert sugar into alcohol. So the reason I add the white wine yeast is so that I don't have to rely on wild yeast to do the fermentation. It'll be more consistent. It's not necessarily traditional to add that, of course, because that's a grape wine yeast, but it does work effectively for rice wine too, because once it has sugar, it can make alcohol, and also it has a pretty high alcohol tolerance, so it'll produce a pretty high alcohol content in the end. So that's why I like using the white wine yeast. Okay, now it's day 30. It's been a month, and it's still fermenting. So normally I would consider bottling it now, but yeah, the instructions were to let it ferment for 2 months for 60 days. So that's what I'm going to do. And there are still some changes. More liquid is accumulating at the top now. So the grains of rice look really soft. And they're falling a little bit, and there's more of a layer of clear wine on top. Yeah, get a close-up look at that. Okay, so I'm happy with how this is fermenting. It's getting close to the end. It's day 58. So I hope it tastes good. We'll see. So day 60 is that's bottling days. So let's filter it now. So we need to strain out all the liquid from the solids. So I'm going to oil my filter bag. That's what I'm going to be using to do that. At the start, I try to take off this clear layer. Maybe I can scoop out the clear layer of wine just by itself. And if it was deeper, maybe I could do that. But I ended up getting a lot of the grains of rice. So that's not going to be efficient. So I'm going to use the filter bag. It was a lot easier just to dump out the whole jar into the filter bag. The jar looks pretty clean. And then it's just a matter of squeezing. And it's not too bad to squeeze this. The liquid is coming out pretty easily. Nice bright colored liquid. And the lees, the leftovers, there's 456 grams. This is called Fuzhou, and it's used for cooking. So don't discard this. You can save it, and you can use it in many dishes. Okay, now we're going to get the liquid into my bottles, and it will further settle in the bottles. It's a bit cloudy now. It'll turn more clear. We'll have a look at that in a few days and do a taste test. Yeah, I'll give it a quick taste right now too. And this has a powerful taste, plenty of alcohol, and a lot of good red yeast rice flavor, which is very distinctive flavor, and nice and smooth, and a lot of sweetness as well. So I think I'm going to enjoy this. Okay, so I like the results so far, but I'm going to give a more complete judgment in 3 days. So here it is. Hey, it's been 3 days. This is my red yeast rice wine, Matsu Islands style. The wine has settled, so there's some sediment at the bottom, but proportionally, it's not a lot, and it settled quickly and well. And you can see the bottle got sucked in a bit as it cooled. That also means that this wine is not carbonated at all. It's not producing any bubbles. Fermentation really is done at this point, I'm pretty sure. It will age well. I should be able to keep this in the fridge for a year or two without a problem. And if I heat treated it, I could age it for 5 years or more. I don't think I'm going to do that because I'm probably going to drink it before that. It's not going to last 5 years, but let's see what it tastes like today. Today is 3 days old. Let's taste a bit of this and see what it's like. Okay, I'm just going to drink the clear layer. This will become even more clear in the fridge over time. Okay, and it's very fragrant. It does have a bit of a vegetable smell to it. That's that yeastiness. That's part of the flavor of it. That's why it's good to use in cooking. But it also has a sweet smell. And it seems quite strong. Plenty of alcohol, a lot of flavor. Aftertaste is a bit yeasty or malty. But it is both sweet and tangy, and the flavor is intense. That red yeast rice flavor is an intense flavor. Yeah, you're really getting something with this brew. A little bit of sweetness at the end too. Some does seem to coat your mouth at the end with some of that yeastiness, but luckily that sweetness helps soften that. Okay, but that flavor seems very normal to me. The good thing is there's not a lot of bitterness, just the only more unusual flavors in it are the yeasty, malty, vegetable type flavors and aromas. But I think that's pretty normal for red yeast rice. And there's lots of alcohol, and this should age well and hopefully mellow out even more and maybe become a little buttery and nutty over time in the fridge. That'll I think that's how it'll evolve, and it'll be more it'll become more clear, but still bright red, but more clear. So I'd like to thank the brewers of Matsu Island for preserving this traditional red yeast rice wine for generations. And I'd like to thank the Chow Cook channel for making that video that inspired me to do this brew in the first place, and it gave me a lot of tips about how to do this better. So I'm glad this worked out. This took a bit more patience because it took 60 days to brew this, but the result is worth it. And thank you for watching.